Volume 2, Chapter 7 of The Last Man. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Madeira. The Last Man by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. Volume 2, Chapter 7. I did proceed to Windsor, but not with the intention of remaining there. I went but to obtain the consent of Idris, and then to return and take my station beside my unequalled friend, to share his labours and save him, if so it must be, at the expense of my life. Yet I dreaded to witness the anguish which my resolve might excite in Idris. I had vowed to my own heart never to shadow her countenance even with transient grief. And should I prove recreant at the hour of greatest need? I had begun my journey with anxious haste. Now I desired to draw it out through the course of days and months. I longed to avoid the necessity of action. I strove to escape from thought vainly. Futurity, like a dark image in a phantasmagoria, came nearer and more near, till it clasped the whole earth in its shadow. A slight circumstance induced me to alter my usual route, and to return home by Egham and Bishopgate. I alighted at Perdita's ancient abode, her cottage, and, sending forward the carriage, determined to walk across the park to the castle. This spot, dedicated to sweetest recollections, the deserted house and neglected garden, were well adapted to nurse my melancholy. In our happiest days, Perdita had adorned her cottage with every aid art might bring to that which nature had selected to favour. In the same spirit of exaggeration she had, on the event of her separation from Raymond, caused it to be entirely neglected. It was now in ruin. The deer had claimed the broken palings, and reposed among the flowers. Grass grew on the threshold, and the swinging lattice creaking to the wind gave signal of utter desertion. The sky was blue above, and the air impregnated with fragrance by the rare flowers that grew among the weeds. The trees moved overhead, awakening nature's favourite melody. But the melancholy appearance of the choked paths and weed-grown flower-beds dimmed even this gay summer scene. The time when in proud and happy security we assembled at this cottage was gone. Soon the present hours rejoined those past, and shadows of future ones rose dark and menacing from the womb of time, their cradle and their bier. For the first time in my life I envied the sleep of the dead, and thought with pleasure of one's bed under the sod, where grief and fear have no power. I passed through the gap of the broken paling. I felt, while I disdained, the choking tears. I rushed into the depths of the forest. O death and change! Rulers of our life, where are ye, that I may grapple with you? What was there in our tranquillity that excited your envy, in our happiness that ye should destroy it? We were happy, loving, and beloved. The horn of Amalthea contained no blessing unshowered upon us, but alas! La fortuna, deidad barbara importuna, hoy cadáver y ayer flor, no permanece jamás. As I wandered on thus ruminating, a number of country people passed me. They seemed full of careful thought, and a few words of their conversation that reached me induced me to approach and make further inquiries. A party of people flying from London, as was frequent in those days, had come up the Thames in a boat. No one at Windsor would afford them shelter, so, going a little further up, they remained all night in a deserted hut near Bolter's Lock. They pursued their way the following morning, leaving one of their company behind them, sick of the plague. This circumstance once spread abroad, none dared approach within half a mile of the infected neighbourhood, and the deserted wretch was left to fight with disease and death in solitude as he best might. I was urged by compassion to hasten to the hut for the purpose of ascertaining his situation and administering to his wants. As I advanced, I met knots of country people talking earnestly of this event. Distant as they were from the apprehended contagion, fear was impressed on every countenance. I passed by a group of these terrorists in a lane in the direct road to the hut. One of them stopped me, and, conjecturing that I was ignorant of the circumstance, told me not to go on, for that an infected person lay but a short distance. "I know it," I replied, "and I am going to see in what condition the poor fellow is." A murmur of surprise and horror ran through the assembly. I continued, "This poor wretch is deserted, dying, succourless. In these unhappy times, God knows how soon any or all of us may be in like want. I am going to do as I would be done by." "But you'll never be able to return to the castle." "Lady Idris, his children!" In confused speech were the words that struck my ear. "Do you not know, my friends," I said, "that the Earl himself, now Lord Protector, visits daily not only those probably infected by this disease, but the hospitals and pest houses, going near and even touching the sick? Yet he was never in better health. You labour under an entire mistake as to the nature of the plague. But do not fear, I do not ask any of you to accompany me, nor to believe me, until I return safe and sound from my patient." So I left them and hurried on. I soon arrived at the hut. The door was ajar. I entered, and one glance assured me that its former inhabitant was no more. He lay on a heap of straw, cold and stiff, while a pernicious effluvia filled the room, and various stains and marks served to shew the virulence of the disorder. I had never before beheld one killed by pestilence. While every mind was full of dismay at its effects, a craving for excitement had led us to pursue Defoe's account, and the masterly delineations of the author of Arthur Mervyn. The pictures drawn in these books were so vivid that we seemed to have experienced the results depicted by them, but cold were the sensations excited by words, burning though they were, and describing the death and misery of thousands, compared to what I felt in looking on the corpse of this unhappy stranger. This, indeed, was the plague. I raised his rigid limbs, I marked the distortion of his face, and the stony eyes lost to perception. As I was thus occupied, chill horror congealed my blood, making my flesh quiver and my hair to stand on end. Half insanely I spoke to the dead. "So the plague killed you," I muttered. "How came this? Was the coming painful? You look as if the enemy had tortured before he murdered you." And now I leapt up precipitately and escaped from the hut, before nature could revoke her laws, and inorganic words be breathed in answer from the lips of the departed. On returning through the lane, I saw at a distance the same assemblage of persons which I had left. They hurried away as soon as they saw me. My agitated mien added to their fear of coming near one who had entered within the verge of contagion. At a distance from facts one draws conclusions which appear infallible, which yet, when put to the test of reality, vanish like unreal dreams. I had ridiculed the fears of my countrymen when they related to others. Now that they came home to myself, I paused. The Rubicon, I felt, was passed, and it behoved me well to reflect what I should do on this hither side of disease and danger. According to the vulgar superstition, my dress, my person, the air I breathed, bore in it mortal danger to myself and others. Should I return to the castle, to my wife and children, with this taint upon me? Not surely if I were infected, but I felt certain that I was not. A few hours would determine the question. I would spend these in the forest, in reflection on what was to come, and what my future actions were to be. In the feeling communicated to me by the sight of one struck by the plague, I forgot the events that had excited me so strongly in London. New and more painful prospects by degrees were cleared of the mist which had hitherto veiled them. The question was no longer whether I should share Adrian's toils and danger, but in what manner I could, in Windsor and the neighbourhood, imitate the prudence and zeal which, under his government, produced order and plenty in London, and how, now pestilence had spread more widely, I could secure the health of my own family. I spread the whole earth out as a map before me. On no one spot of its surface could I put my finger and say,